Operating Systems, Features, Processes, UI and Management, Part 2. In previous chapter we learned about the various components of an operating system such as file systems and features. Now in this chapter you will learn about the various components of an operating system such as file management, services, processes, drivers, utilities, and interfaces. File management. File folders, directories, file types and extensions, and permissions are all essential parts of file management. Folders, directories. In Windows, macOS, and Linux, you can create, switch to, and delete folders, directories, in two ways. From the command line, Windows command prompt, Linux macOS terminal. From a file manager in the GUI. Windows folder directory commands. After opening a command prompt, you can use the following commands. cd /pathname /directory name to change to any directory, folder, on the current drive. cd pathname /directory name to change to a directory below the current directory. md /directory name to create a new directory one level below the root directory. md directory name to create a new directory one level below the current directory. rd /directory name to remove an empty directory one level below the root directory. rd directory name to remove an empty directory one level below the current directory. Linux macOS folder directory commands. After opening a terminal session, you can use these commands. cd pathname directory name to change to any directory, folder, on the current drive. cd pathname directory name to change to a directory below the current directory. mdir directory name to create a new directory one level below the root directory. mdir directory name to create a new directory one level below the current directory. mdir directory name to remove an empty directory one level below the root directory. mdir directory name to remove an empty directory one level below the current directory. File types and extensions. Windows, macOS, and Linux differ in their use of file types and extensions. Windows file types and extensions. Windows is heavily dependent on file extensions, .docs, .pdf, .jpg, etc., to determine how to handle files. A file extension that has been matched up with a file type and a default app to open it with is known as a registered file type. By default, File Explorer, Windows 10 version, and Windows Explorer do not display registered file types. Hiding file types as the normal setting causes users who rename files to be less likely to delete or change a file extension. Many email-based attacks use a fake file extension, such as something.txt.x, to try to compromise a system. With registered file extensions hidden by default, an unwary user might mistake something.txt, with actual.x hidden, for a harmless text file rather than a potentially hazardous executable file. The same dialogues can also be used to make normally hidden files and folders visible. Linux file types and extensions. Linux recognizes 7 different file types. Unlike Windows, Linux makes little use of extensions. Instead, the files MIME, multipurpose internet mail extensions, information is embedded into the file, and this information is used to enable Linux to choose the correct app to open a file. macOS file types and extensions. macOS uses file extensions when present to help determine how to open a file, but it can also use MIME types for files that have no extension. Services refer to processes that are launched when a system is started or when a particular task is started. Common services include connecting to wireless networks, setting up a print spooler, power management, and many others. Viewing and managing services in Microsoft Windows. To view running services in Microsoft Windows, open Task Manager and select More Details, then click the Services tab. All available services are listed, and each running service has a process ID number, PID. To change the status of a service, right-click it and select Start, Stop, or Restart. You can also open the Services menu or learn more about the service. Services can also be viewed and managed with the SC command line program. The easiest way to manage Windows services is through the Computer Management Console's Services module. Open it by entering Services MSC in the search, Cortana, window and clicking Services when it appears in the results. It can also be launched from the Windows Administrative Tools folder or from Computer Management. Select a service to stop, start, pause, or manage its settings with properties. Viewing and managing services in macOS. In macOS, services work much differently than in Windows. Services in macOS are managed through the System Preferences, Keyboard, Shortcuts tab. Click Services to see available services. You can assign custom keystrokes to activate a service, and you can enable or disable services. By assigning keystrokes to a service, you can use the service more quickly. To see which services are available, select a file or text and hold down the Control key while clicking. Viewing and managing services in Linux. The init.d folder in Linux is used to store services that will be run at startup and shut down when the system is shut down. To see the contents of init.d, and thus the startup services, use ls etc. init.d, Debian-based distributions such as Ubuntu, or ls etc. rc.d init.d, Red Hat-based distributions such as Fedora. To list all services, running or not, use service status all. Plus means service running. Dash means service not running. Means status unknown. To start a service, use sudo service servicename start. To stop a service, use sudo service servicename stop. If prompted, provide the password for the current user. Processes. Processes are any programs or services that are running at a particular time. Windows, macOS, and Linux all include utilities to display and manage processes. Be careful about stopping processes. Stopping a vital process could crash your system. The safest way to practice stopping a process is to start a program you are not using and then stop it. Viewing and managing processes in Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Windows includes the GUI-based Task Manager and the command line task list and task kill utilities for managing processes. Task Manager can be started from the Cortana search window, or by pressing the Ctrl+Alt+Del keys and selecting Task Manager. Task Manager starts in simple mode, listing running programs. Click more details to see a multi-tab display with processes, performance, app history, startup programs, users, details, and services. To stop a process or app in either mode, right-click it and select End Task. Viewing and managing processes in macOS. When you use macOS, the dock at the bottom of the display shows you the apps that use the macOS GUI. To force a GUI app to stop, press Command plus Option plus Escape keys and choose to app to stop from the Force Quit Applications dialog. After reviewing running apps, press Escape if you don't want to close one. However, many other processes could be running. Use the Activity Monitor to view them. Activity Monitor can be started from the Applications menu. Activity Monitor is similar to the Windows Task Manager and can be used to stop various processes. macOS can also use the Top and PS Terminal, command line, utilities, which are also available in Linux, to view processes. Viewing and managing processes in Linux. From the Linux terminal, use Top to see running services for the current user and root user. Press Ctrl+C to stop the display. To see options for filtering and sorting, enter Top H. To see running apps and services, use PSAUX. This command lists the user first, followed by PID, and the last two items are the amount of time active and the name of the service or app. To see options for PS, enter PS Help. To kill, stop, a process, look up the PID with either Top or PS, then use Kill. Kill PID. Drivers. A device driver is a computer program that operates or controls a particular type of device that is attached to a computer. For a device driver to work, the following all need to be true. The driver matches the hardware. The driver is the correct type for the operating system. The driver supports 32-bit operation for a 32-bit CPU or 64-bit operation for a 64-bit CPU. Obtaining drivers for Microsoft Windows. Drivers compatible with Microsoft Windows are provided by the hardware vendor. Older Windows includes some drivers for printers and other types of devices. These drivers are often limited in features. For the best support for your hardware, download the latest drivers, preferred, or use the drivers packaged with the device. When downloading drivers for a particular device, be sure to choose a driver that is designed for your version of Windows and processor type, 32-bit or 64-bit. Drivers can be updated through Device Manager. To update drivers, right-click the device, select Properties, click the Driver tab, and click Update Driver. You can search your computer and the internet or browse the computer to locate an updated driver. After the driver is updated, you might need to restart your computer. Obtaining drivers for macOS. Apple provides drivers for hardware built into its macOS computers. For third-party devices, download drivers at the vendor's website. Be sure to verify that your version of macOS and your hardware are compatible with the driver. Obtaining drivers for Linux. There are many ways to obtain device drivers for Linux, depending on the distribution you use and your hardware vendor. Some hardware vendors host Linux drivers on their websites. However, many drivers, particularly for printers, are available as Linux packages that are available through a distribution's package manager. To locate a package that contains a driver in Debian-based distributions such as Ubuntu, open a terminal session and use this command. Sudo apt-cache search driver name. Utilities. A utility or software utility is computer system software intended to analyze, configure, monitor, or help maintain a computer. Usually, a utility is smaller than a standard program in size and may be included with an operating system or installed separately. Windows utilities. Windows utilities are typically located in one of two places in the Start menu. Windows accessories. Windows administrative tools. Here is a list of some of the most useful utilities. Character map. Add characters such as icons, custom buttons, math symbols, and more to documents or images. Snipping tool. Grab any part of the screen and save to a file. Computer management. Configure services, disk drives, etc. Disk cleanup. Remove unneeded files. Event viewer. See warnings, errors, device installation, etc. System configuration. Change boot process settings, startup programs, and services run at startup. Memory diagnostic. Test system memory. macOS utilities. macOS utilities are located in the Applications Utilities folder. Some of the most useful utilities include the following. Activity monitor, displays processes, CPU, memory, energy, disk, and network usage. Can also stop processes and run diagnostics. Console, logs system activity. Disk utility, displays information about connected drives. Also prepares drives for use and repairs disk problems. System information, displays information about your computer, connected hardware, installed software, and the network. Terminal, use it to run command line utilities. Linux utilities. Ubuntu and other distributions that use the GNOME desktop store utilities in the Applications Utilities folder. Some of the most useful utilities include the following. Archive Manager, works with compressed archive files. Backup, backs up selected folders to local or online locations. Disk Usage Analyzer, provides split-screen view of file usage. Image Viewer, views images. Screenshot, captures windows, selected areas, and full screen. Task Scheduling. Task scheduling is one of the most important functions in any operating system. In Microsoft Windows, use Task Scheduler to run an app at startup or when particular events take place. macOS uses the Automator to run apps, services, folder actions, and other types of activities. Linux distributions typically run the cron daemon, service, automatically at startup. Cron performs tasks as directed by the crontab file. Crontab is a plain text file that is edited from a console, terminal, session to add the commands desired. To start the editing process, use sudo crontab. If prompted, choose a text editor. Interfaces. Windows, macOS, and Linux all support two interfaces: console command lines and graphical user interface, GUI. Console command line. Microsoft Windows uses the command line, also known as command prompt, primarily for technical management tasks. To open a command line session, open cmd.x. However, to use cmd.x to make changes to your system, run cmd.x as administrator. macOS, like Windows, uses a terminal session for advanced configuration options not available from the GUI. Most, but not all, macOS terminal commands are similar to those in Linux. Both macOS and Linux are based on Unix. Some Linux distros boot directly to the Linux console using the terminal app. Others boot to a GUI such as GNOME. However, Linux uses the console mode for most management operations. To make changes to the Linux environment, most distros require the current user to add sudo at the start of the command. Sudo allows a user to run apps that normally require an administrator, and users may be prompted to enter their passwords. GUI. Windows and macOS boot to their GUI environments as standard. Some Linux distros include a GUI and boot to the GUI. Common Linux GUIs include Plasma Desktop, developed by KDE, and GNOME, developed by the GNU Project.